Brittany here today talking a little bit about implementing EOS, the things we've learned from implementing EOS, and some of the best tips that we've seen. We're not EOS experts and we're not an EOS coach, that is for sure. But we have gone through the process. We see other agencies going through it as well, and think it's helpful to give some feedback and some ideas of what we found that was really helpful in the space of, I guess, implementing EOS as we went through it. So I guess one of the first things you need to do, like I said, we're not a teacher, so you do some things first, and then you get to this part, and you go and you identify your core values, right? And you have your core values and you rate them on a grid at the top, right? So you have 4 or 5 core values you're going to lay across the top. And then you have your people coming down the side. And all you do is do plus, minus in each of those areas to see how those people identify to those core values. Brittany, do you remember the process going any different than that?
It was actually an interesting process. So Michael and I had to sit together and develop our core values. And we sat across from each other and our coach was like, I want you both to write what you think they are. And we had to essentially share that with each other and decide what those were. So that's the first step that you have to go through, is like your mission statement, what really matters to you. And then if you have a partner, you have someone that you're doing this with, or your team, you guys have to decide what those core values look like. So I think it
was kind of like couples counseling for a business, right? Yeah. Raising your baby, right? Like your business baby is what we're raising. So.
Yeah. And it took us a lot longer than I thought it would. I thought it was going to be easy. And then I was nervous because I was like, oh, what am I going to say? What's he going to say? Are we on the same page? And then, thankfully we were. I think we had a lot of good things. There were a lot of buzzwords and we tried to really flesh it out. That's what your coach does. I think it is important to get an EOS coach in that sense. If you were to look at all the EOS stuff in front of you without it, I don't know that it all makes sense, because we had to have it kind of explained to us and then walk through the process, like he said, like couples counseling. And then once you get there, that's the people analyzer side. So you apply those core values to your people or your clients. And that was a very interesting moment, I think, for both of us, to rate everybody in our company. And then even use it. We have like client fires or something. It's a way to use it too, and see, do these people line up with our core values and do we want to keep them as clients? And that was probably one of the best things that came out of the initial like strategy sessions with our coach.
I also think it was interesting that we went through it. And if you remember back, I don't know, one of the first times I came to Portland, you and I worked together and identified how we are going to review people, right? And we indirectly kind of got to the same place of, hey, we're going to measure these people against what we feel to be very important, right? Client happiness, these other things that the other core values. Why don't you list off the core values that we identified for EOS?
For EOS, we had good communication, flexibility, honesty was actually one. So what Michael's talking about, when we came up with our review system, we had attitude, innovation, skill set, and then reliability. Those were all really, really important to us. And that was like years ago now. Going into EOS, it changed just slightly because I think we were thinking in terms of customer service and what we wanted the clients to experience, like putting the client first, more as like we were putting more the team first in a sense. So we ended up coming up with the transparency and honesty, good communication, obviously just overall giving a good experience, because I think that's what led us to start looking more at a client first model with how we were going to rate the team. And they ended up lining up pretty much the same, different words, a little different meaning for some of them, but I think all in all it ended up being in line with what we had already felt, which was good. It was a little relief to know that we weren't completely off track.
And I think one of the ones that we talked about was passion as well, right?
That's right.
Passion is funny that we forgot that one because it's kind of the important one, right?
We do talk about it a lot, yeah.
Yeah. It's the passion we want to have for digital marketing just in general and serving clients. That's what we look for as part of our core values. And like you said, you go across, you have core values at top, people down the side, and you rate them plus or minus based on how you think those people perform in your agency at that level. It's an interesting process to go through. Like you said, you see through a different lens, right? I mean, I'm an innovator. I'm in the innovator position. Brittany's in the implementer position, and it's interesting to see how she views people and how I, at one step away, view people as well, right? She's more intimate with those people, understands more of their problems and kind of what they're up against, where I don't see all of that all the time, right? As she does. So anything else kind of to add there?
The plus/minus is a tricky spot. And we found ourselves in that with a couple of people where they're like on the border of either they fall into it or they don't fall into it. They wanted to do it right. There's a whole sequence you have to ask for the questions. Do they want to do it? Are they a good fit? It's that whole right person, right seat coaching it'll take you through. And that's where you can decide whether or not they fit into it. And for the people that don't fit into it, it's an eye opener as you have to ask yourself why you're keeping them there, either in the right seat or are they the right person? Like that's when you start asking yourself those questions. So I think once a quarter or even just twice a year this is a really good activity actually to walk yourself through. So you do it once at the beginning of EOS, but then I think to go through it a couple of times a year is a good practice.
Cool. Anything else you want to add as we wrap up this?
Traction was probably, our traction meetings were really good for us. Probably the second best thing that came out of EOS when we implemented it. And it was because we would meet and we'd have our little doc and we'd go over things, but it's really easy to get sidetracked. The way that Traction's set up, it sets you up to, if you're a bigger team that has like icebreakers and things like that in there, it's just Michael and I. So we usually talk all the time anyway. And we dive right into our goals.
I think understanding the segues, right? That stuff is important because I get to see what's going on in your personal life. You hear what's going on in mine, which I think honestly helps build the bond stronger, right? And then as obviously the agency weighs on that bond, you know that you're still good and you still have that connection. And like for us, I think it's somewhat, I don't want to put this out in the universe, but it's unbreakable, right? Like you and I, we talk about how we're gonna ride this thing together forever, no matter what happens. And it's comforting for me to have somebody like that, right? To believe in and to have somebody that's gonna, take this agency to the next level as well. So I think those things are important because you get to know more about each other than just in the business sense. So I get to hear about her kids and her amazing baking and the cooking that she does. She gets to hear about how I order takeout all the time and still do that. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And I think that's a good point. We do know each other really well, but it's funny how many times we would stop and go, hold on, let me think about it. Like, well, you're supposed to say like what a good thing happened in your personal life and your professional life. And it slows you down to actually stop and think about those things because you're moving so fast that I think sometimes you forget. So I think it's cool. In a bigger group, it would be interesting to see how long that actually takes. So with Traction, you only get a set number of times, essentially little minutes that are associated to each stage of it. So that's the first part, is kind of opening it up and like calming the room. It's your little icebreaker moment. And then the second one is to go through and review your rocks. So Traction really centers around goals and small milestones and then larger ones. So going through,
I think you got to first talk about, there's one person that runs the meeting, right? And it's not necessarily the owner of the company that gets to run it, right?
So the funniest thing our EOS coach told us was, so that's me and our agent, it's your implementer. That's the person who runs these meetings. And he looked at Michael and was like, Michael, if she says to move on, you move on. It's just like, oh. So the implementer, you have to identify someone in the group who's going to run them and keep everybody on pace and track that time and make sure you do move on and you don't get stuck. It really is systematized to like make your meetings the most efficient as possible, but you have to put a leader in front of everybody. So that was a good point that you just hit on.
Thanks. I just said something smart. I appreciate it.
So do you want to talk about how we came to our goals, or like how we address
those? Then you have your customer and team headlines, right? You celebrate wins, you do different things like that. You talk about those things. And then you talk about your rock reviews, right? So you identify things you want to what things do you want to move forward? What things are you going to execute for the team or for the company or whatever it may be, whatever projects you want to take on, right? And that's the whole idea of identifying a project. And then I think it's kind of like, hey, starting with the end in mind. What do you want to get to? Cool. Then back up and you create your task list based off of that.
Right.
And your task list comes from that. I shouldn't be talking because this is your job and you understand better than I do. So.
I think a key, because this is just a very really high level video of just our experience with this. The scorecard was really cool to keep track of. We have other ways now to measure and do this, but we started with a spreadsheet, and it was the KPIs that you hold your team to and the ones that really mattered for your bottom line. And Michael has always done something very similar to this, but EOS does help guide you on what the scorecard looks like, and you have to look at it. I think the biggest thing for me was just every single Monday at the exact same time, we sit down and we look at those things in our face, and you can't forget about them. And that's what the cool thing about the way EOS meetings or the traction meetings are set up, is that you constantly have to revisit these things on a weekly basis. And that allows you to not forget and make a priority list and decide what's going to matter the most as a team. And I think it actually ended up bringing our meetings were more efficient for sure. But it brings us a little closer together and in line with goals and KPIs and what we're going to do as an action plan going forward. And I think it actually just made us feel overall like we were better together, tackling a lot of the issues that we face.
I think it also holds, like you said, holds people accountable. When you come in every time you be like, I didn't get that done. And you're like,
no, it makes you feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're letting your teammates down, which I think is kind of what I like about it, right? It's like it's very team oriented stuff. And then, obviously after the to-do list, you have your issues, right? Where you put, like, let's say there's roadblocks or whatever you run into as you're doing your task list, you add those to the issues list. Or if, like, what I find us doing a lot is throughout the week, we run into an issue. It's not an urgent issue where I got to talk to Brittany immediately about it. I put it on the list. Or if there's something new that I found that I think we need to discuss, put it on the list to discuss. And that's kind of how ours have worked, where, hey, I identify as the implementer or as the visionary person. I put something on the list that I'm like, hey, I think I want to do this going forward. We talk through it, 40% of them make it to the next level, which then we start to burn out a little bit. And then maybe 20 or 30% actually get implemented into the company where we're at with it. So overall, that's kind of the process, I guess, at a high level and what we've run through. I think we go in ebbs and flows of it, I think sometimes like us just talking about it right now really got me excited to do our rocks again, because we just came up against, us finishing our rocks for the month and need to re-identify those for the quarter and re-identify those and get those back on there. We know what they are, but we just don't have them written down. We constantly talk about them, but it would be better if they were written down. So we got to go back and do that again and add that there. But overall, it's a system we've used, and we've used it for almost a year now, right?
Yeah, I think it's lasted longer than any tool we've ever purchased. So it's good.
Well, good, because we spent the money on it, right? So overall, it's a good process. You can definitely take things from it and morph it into what you need it to be, but I think there is power in keeping the structure as you have it. So that's kind of, I don't know, anything else you want to add right now?
No, this is just a little bit of our feedback and our experience with EOS. I think it's worth, I would say, because we are already a bigger agency, it's hard for me to give advice on when it's a good time to implement it. But I do think even for a small agency, the structure itself is really great. And then looking at your people and the way that it'll coach you through looking and identifying the right people in the right seats, I think even a team of 5 could benefit from something like this.
Absolutely.
So I do think it's worth an investment, at least to get yourself immersed or dabble in the EOS side. And then like we did, we actually set ours up in Monday, which is where we are, keeping yourself in a centralized space for EOS, where you don't have like docs all over the place and stuff. Keep it in the same spot. That's been a good one for us, so we can always go back and look. And sometimes we have things on our issues list that we decide, it's not a people issue, it's not a process issue, it's more of an idea. So we have a whole list of ideas now that have transpired from some of these conversations, which is cool. And we can keep track of it in one spot.
Yeah. Absolutely. Cool. I'm Michael. She's Brittany. That's our take on EOS.